welcome to How I Ended Up in Vegas. I'm Nicci.
I'm Meghan.
We are real estate partners, we're friends, but we're more like soul sisters.
Definitely. I feel like we have this question that we ask a lot or that we get into a lot. It's what brought you here? And it always kind of ends up in this interesting story and gets a really interesting answer from the people that we meet.
Yeah, and many times it leads to us learning connections or commonalities that we share and common threads between us.
So today we're going to tell you a little bit more about us.
I'm a native Las Vegan. I was born and raised here. Meghan, tell everybody what brought you here and how long you expected to stay.
So I moved here from California in 2000 completely on a whim, had no plans to stay, and I thought maybe I'd be here a year and a half, and 22 years later, I'm still here. So what about you? Have you ever thought about leaving Las Vegas?
Absolutely. I was fully intending on going to Orange County for college, to go to Chapman and go into journalism school. And instead I stayed here and bought a house, bought my first condo when I was 19.
That's so crazy. I feel like a lot of people bought houses here really young.
Yeah. It was a goal of mine. I started out living on Desert Inn and Eastern, and it's interesting to see where people who lived in the center of town have sprawled out and found their communities throughout Las Vegas.
Yeah, there's definitely some commonalities with that. Like I prefer the West Side in Summerlin, and you live in Henderson. Is that your favorite side of town?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite side of town, but I do feel like I was called there. I remember driving down the 215 as they were like really expanding the newer side of East Henderson. Yeah. And I just felt like my soul was meant to be there.
Like a belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So what drew you to the Summerlin area?
You know, I don't know. I think I remember going for a job interview in Summerlin when I was maybe 19. I was 19. I had just moved here. And ever since then, I just happened to gravitate to that area. I've lived all over town. There's just something about it. I can't really put my finger on it. I think you're really close to the mountains. I really love Red Rock and the scenery of the hills. And then it's a little bit cooler there in the summer, like maybe 5 or 6 degrees. And there's, like you said, the sense of belonging. I just feel like I belong there. Maybe it's nostalgic to a certain degree. So what is a nostalgic piece of history for you growing up here?
Well, I grew up the daughter of a liquor distributor. So I was the +1 to all of his dinner parties and spilled multiple Shirley Temples at Michael's 5-star restaurant. This was in the Barbary Coast at the time. Barbary Coast no longer exists for those of you who don't live here. But that was like my life. I remember, he would take me out on the Strip a ton. We were usually there 2 or 3 times a week. And I remember crossing Las Vegas Boulevard, obviously when you were still like on the street, not, up on the pedestrian corridors. Like you were actually crossing on the street. I remember seeing the dunes. I remember when Mirage opened. So lots of nostalgic memories from childhood.
Sounds really glamorous.
It was glamorous. I was like the child cover of Vogue. Las Vegas.
I love it. I love it. I just the stories you must have and all the interesting things you must have seen, like that are maybe even just tucked away there. I think that's the stuff I'd love to know.
Yeah, I did get my my fake ID taken away though at Mandalay Bay, and I think you have nostalgic memories kind of similar.
I do. There was something about, I think even today, like I still love a good nightclub and I still love to go out, but I had a neighbor. I lived in an apartment building where my neighbors were the bouncers for a number of different nightclubs, and there was one that would sneak us into Raw at the Luxor through Hamada of Japan through the back way. And I even had like a little kitten card for Raw. And up until recently, I still carried it around my wallet. There's just something about it for me. It just reminds me of being young and like, I don't know, just like feeling excited about being here in Vegas. I'm from a small town in California, and just like feeling like I was in this big new place. It's a fun memory of mine.
Okay, here's another nostalgic Vegas memory. When I was working at the WB, this is my first news station in Vegas, doesn't exist anymore.
Is it Warner Brothers? Was it?
Yeah. So we would be part of like movie shoots, and one of the movies that was shooting in Las Vegas was Miss Congeniality 2.
Oh my gosh.
So I got to meet, this is actually, I don't know why I didn't bring this up. This is actually my favorite like story ever that I probably didn't take advantage of in the moment, but I met Dolly Parton. I was literally
dead. Like if I could, I mean, when they say like if you could have dinner with a celebrity, I would never like, I'm never good at those like questions on the fly, but if I could have dinner with like 3 people, like she would be one of them. She's an amazing human and an amazing storyteller. So tell me about that.
Well, first I have to thank Dolly Parton, Oprah, Charlie Hunnam, right? 3 people?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of Charlie Hunnam because he's the default, right? Okay, so she was so kind, and we were in, the same like arm space, right? Where I had a camera, but I was like a tourist, but who was also filming like they were going to use the footage as like a tourist recorder, home footage kind of video in the movie. So in between takes, she was just so lovely. And I don't get like crazy. I'll just go quiet. I don't get like crazy, frantic or fangirl or anything, but I just like, oh my God, that's Dolly Parton. Yeah. And she was just like, how y'all doing today? Like just making real small talk. And so you see the respect that they all have for each other and everything that is going on in the scene. And
that is so cool. Yeah. She's an amazing human. And I feel like you can sense some people who are like just down to earth. And I feel like she's just who she is. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been following her for a long time. Like I'm like a big fan of her music. I don't know, that runs deep for me.
Have you started listening to the podcast?
No. Have you picked up, she has this book called Storyteller. Anyway, I think it's Songteller. She has a book where she goes through and she talks about all of the songs that she wrote and like the story behind them. It is so fascinating.
Dolly Parton's America, she literally starts out in the first episode talking about how she was young and like suicidal.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we're getting vulnerable here. We're going deep. I love this. This is my thing.
Yeah, I like that. I am not one, like I can talk about anything, but I'm not really into, not to say I can't have superficial conversations, but I like conversations that go deep. Like I want to have those relationships where we talk about philosophy and like we really get into like, I want to know like what's behind. I want to dig deep. I want to peel back the layers. Like I want to know all the things.
Yeah. Where have you found a sense of community living here?
It's been a combination of church, people through church, but a lot of work relationships that developed when I first moved here. I have some friends that I've met when I first moved here that were through a friend of a friend in the casino industry, and I'm still friends with them. But I think work has been kind of the primary hub of where I found some of my community and relationships. What about you?
I think the biggest community or the group that I found when I was about 21, I was having my first daughter and her dad was going to Iraq. So I had a 10-day-old, was on maternity leave, and I resorted to going to church. I found a church community. I belonged to the Mormon church. I don't go anymore, but those people who you go to church with are all your neighbors. They live right next to you. So I have wonderful people who live around me who I know, and I cherish those relationships. And just recently in the past couple of years, besides the news industry of people who have come in and out of my life through news, I've also found this lovely group of people through Pilates and yoga.
You do a lot of stuff with them, right?
I do. It's fun. They're a fun group of women and one man or two. Occasionally. So it's Sunday. The weather is perfect. Describe in vivid detail what you are doing in Las Vegas.
If it's Sunday, hopefully I'll make it to church and then brunch. I think brunch after church is always the best, or brunch any day is the best. It's one of your favorite meals, right?
Brunch is my favorite meal.
I love it. And so if brunch and then maybe a drive, like I love to go through a drive any time of year through the 160 back through the scenic route through Red Rock Canyon. Mm-hmm. And then if it's nice weather, which hiking, so it might be hiking at Red Rock or Mount Charleston, anytime I can get out there and get on the hills, I'm happy.
Yeah.
What about you?
For sure, getting outside. I love to hike and love to take long walks for many years. My walking partner and I did 4 to 5 miles during COVID. We were doing 10. Wow. So when the weather is just crisp and the sky, I swear, in Las Vegas, anytime I see video of like a blue sky like this, I can tell like that's Vegas. Vegas. Like, it's a cops episode, but that's Vegas, you know?
I have that with my hometown too. Like, my ex-husband used to be like, you don't recognize that tumbleweed. I'm like, no, I know that tree. I know that section of tumbleweeds. I know those hills. Like, you just know it.
Yeah, I can tell you the coordinates of where that is. But yeah, definitely being outside, going to brunch, probably taking the dogs out. I have 2 doodles, and anytime they can get outside, they spring out the door.
I think I just short-circuited. This is the downside of getting older.
We have no brain.
Cobwebs.
So. Did you ever see Drop Dead Fred?
Yes. I love that movie. Oh my gosh. I don't think my daughter has seen it, but that was one of my favorite movies. What's her name? Phoebe something or other?
She has cobwebs.
Yes. Yes. I love that movie. I'm gonna have to watch it tonight.
Of all did I have my girls seen it?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I've made them watch all of my kid movies. Oh I was an only child for 9 years in the 90s.
Yeah.
So when you talk about 90s movies, I know them. I have seen them all 55 million times.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, I wasn't an only child, but I was the only child at home from the age of 7 until I was an adult. So there was a lot of like HBO or like, you know, when you get the Cinemax like free week or whatever, like the preview where you could watch all the movies. Like, we just watched True Lies last night. Yeah. There was a lot of like cover your eyes and ears moments for Izzy because there was a lot of stuff I don't remember. But, like, I think every 90s movie, I think that's when the best movies were made, like the 80s and 90s. Yeah. I don't think any movies that they make today can really hold a candle to those, just the originality of them.
Not at all. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead is that movie to me. Yes. With my kids. I was like, I don't remember this language.
That is one of the best movies. I still I live my life through movies and comedy quotes. Yeah. Like, I'm right on top of that, Rose.
Oh my gosh. Riley walked into my office last week and she was like, I'm right on top of that, Rose.
I think that's like such a legacy I feel happy to pass along to my children. They're picking up on those things too. And I just love it. They love some of the same things, and it's fun to watch those things through their eyes for the first time. You forget how funny they are.
Yeah. I was walking into Target the other night, and I was cold, so I was walking quickly. So I was like, who do I sound like? And I'm like, come on. I was like, she's like, Troop Beverly Hills. I'm like, nailed it.
The best. All right. So what I really can't wait is to hear what our guests are going to say when we ask them those questions.
We have some very interesting people coming on the show. We'll be asking them some of those very same things.
While most of our guests have lived here for quite a bit of time, I think they all really have some interesting experiences, not only about how they ended up here, but some of the things they're doing now personally and professionally. So we're going to start to hear from them next week.
We hope you enjoyed this very first edition of How I Ended Up in Vegas, where there's only about 3 degrees of separation between everybody. We'll see you next week.